Hello. The rest of the committee should be logging on pretty soon. And right now we're in like practice mode, so we are good. And we'll let everyone in right at 1 o'clock. So we can just kind of chat. And if anybody has any questions, we can knock those out right now.
I just wanted to say hello, everyone.
Hello. We did get a couple of questions in, I think yesterday. So if we can get those audience questions in, I can submit them in our chat. But I think we actually might be already addressing them. There's one person that submitted some really good questions. So I don't know if anyone knows Cynthia Paredes. It looks like she was sent the information from a family member. She submitted some really good questions.
Hi, Crystal.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I just wanted to make sure, do you not want us to have our cameras on right now?
No, you can turn them on. Yeah, you
So-
can make sure that your sound and your camera and all that stuff works.
So there's an error on my side, like it won't let me turn on the camera. It says the host has stopped it.
Oh no, what did I do? Let's see. Do. I was wondering, I was like, well, maybe it's just me.
Yeah, that happened in my class this fall. Like all of us couldn't turn it on. And finally somebody 45 minutes into the lecture was like, do you, like our professor was like, is there something I did wrong? Or like, it was really funny.
I'm so sorry. Okay, so I made all three of you co-hosts. I don't know what I did. I just created it and like I normally do. What did you do, Crystal? Let's see. Brandon, I don't think I've ever met you before. So Crystal Sanchez, very nice to meet you.
Likewise, Brandon Cruz. I'm with Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
Gotcha. Let's see, what did I do? Oh yeah, since we're live, it's not going to let me edit it. For some reason, I put video off on host and panelist, and I don't know why I did that. Well, making you a co-host solved that, so. And I guess before Dean Mendez comes on, just kind of a quick, right when we get started, so we have, I'm not sure, so we have Lauren, who is the co-chair of the diversity committee. She will be on, I'm not sure how many others, as long as we have one that's kind of overseeing the Q&A. You guys can, if there's a question that comes in and there's an opening for it, like if someone says, Jared just makes a comment and then someone asks a question, this is very just lax and fluid, like you guys can answer the question right then and there. There's no formal really, except for just like an intro. We have potential questions and then a closing out. But other than that, if you guys want to interact with any of the Q&A, you are more than welcome to. You can, if someone else is talking, you can answer via chat, whatever you guys feel comfortable doing. The only other thing that I can think of, is really, I mean, if there is something that inspires you to kind of share your own, story or testimony or whatever it is, if it's another question that's not, one that was sent, because a lot of times our conversation can go this way and then it takes a hard left, in a good way, please feel free. I think the times that the people that have RSVP'd or attending, feel that you are real live, human beings, they connect with you and they really appreciate when you share your own personal stories, because you are people like them. And even though you are in these, roles or positions, I think for them, it just, it inspires them and in their own journeys to possibly, seek these other potential, avenues or roads for themselves. So that's what we have found. So just be yourself. Hey, Emily.
Thank you, Crystal. Ah. Hello. Sorry, it
So-
won't let me turn on my video.
Yeah, I'm gonna make you guys a co-host. For some reason, I set it up to where, so Lauren and Emily, I just made you co-hosts. I don't know, I set it up to where the videos, you guys couldn't access the videos. So now I know.
Now you can see me
There's Lauren.
briefly.
Hey, Crystal, for the introduction, what do you want us to cover? Like brief?
Yeah, so you can just, if you want to say your name, kind of your role, whatever your title or your role is, and you can also add, sometimes people add like what their background is. You can do that too. It's completely up to you. After you guys introduce yourselves, I am going to say the kind of the one intro question is, what does brown, proud, and educated mean to you? So if you want to kind of save your background for that, then you can totally do that. But as long as it's just your name and your title, that's perfectly okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Amy, making you a co-host. Apparently I nixed y'all's authority to turn on your videos.
Yeah, I clicked my video button at least 6 times. Oh, hi.
Hey, there she is. This is the co-moderator, Amy.
I've been practicing my radio voice all week. I'm just kidding. I
Good.
Sounds great.
All right, we kind of already went
Well-
through a little bit of the intro, Amy, just letting them know that, we'll open up. I'll say welcome to Red Talks, then you'll introduce yourself as the co-moderator. We'll talk about the diversity committee that's on the call, that's going to oversee the Q&A. So people are welcome to submit questions. And then the panelists will introduce themselves with their name, title, and any other information they want to share. And then we'll just jump into a quick intro, which is, what does brown, proud, and educated mean to you?
Okay. I'm looking for, where is it?
The questions?
Yes, I know I had it. Did I put it in the wrong inbox?
I'll forward it to you. I have mine up.
Oh, I did. I put it in the wrong email inbox.
Okay,
Okay, it's supposed to go in diversity committee. Okay, found it.
got it.
Okay. It's the one you sent out on the 6th. Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Okay, and then I guess we're just waiting on Dean Mendez. Hopefully he's got the right link. That used to confuse me too.
Y'all, I ate a really spicy sandwich before I joined, so I'm gonna tone that down a second with, okay.
I'm more shady that you didn't like share your spicy sandwich with me. Like I'm ready for lunch after this is where I'm coming from.
Oh, I was like eating it so fast while trying to answer emails. She was like, I have to get the sandwich. Like, and the chips got me. The Boar's Head jalapeno chips, y'all. Ooh,
Challenge by choice.
it was tough. I had to put them on the sandwich to tone them down, and then it just, anyways, it's rough. How is everybody? How's our week been going?
It's going for sure.
It's going.
Yesterday was a blast. Amy, you were there. Wasn't that just a really powerful evening?
Yes, that was so fun. And Dr. Blair, I was infatuated with her research. Like obviously I'm not a social scientist, so of course I wouldn't have thought of that, but just the way how she put that research together was fascinating. So
Fascinated. It was
Yeah.
the gala. I'm sorry, I'm getting the name wrong, Amy. What is it? The
it was the boots and bows and bow ties. I think I have them
rainbow
backwards.
ties, yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
the gala. It was great. So to include everybody in this conversation, the research was so a Canadian professor, I don't remember the institution that she's at in Canada. She brought her speech to us through Zoom last night. It was great. But she's basically researching like hetero responses to same-sex PDA. And how, because as civil rights advances in LGBTQ inclusion, I guess, spread and increase across Canada and the United States, there's a rise in hate crimes and violence towards that community. And so basically her research proved that trend. And then she also tested physiological factors of the response to pictures in her hetero sample size, which disproved the gay panic defense.
That's legal in Texas.
Yes, and has only been outlawed in like 15 regions of the country.
So basically it's gay person, rage. I'm gonna
Yeah.
beat them up, like fight or flight. That's the legal defense.
Yeah,
Which
and
I
she
didn't know there
disproved
was
it.
like a technical term.
Yeah, her research disproves that. And then she also coordinated, she correlated same-sex couple vigilance and same-sex PDA to mental and physical health. And with increased vigilance comes lower mental and physical health. But with lower PDA, so also comes lower mental and physical health. Yeah, so it was just very interesting, and she talked about that. And I asked her a question in the chat. My question was, do you have any pets? If so, what kind and what are their names? But she didn't answer it.
How rude. And she
Totally
did
agree.
really well. This was completely virtual. She was tuning in from Canada, and it did not feel like a virtual session. I was so on the edge of my seat
Mhm,
the entire experience.
mhm. Like
So
I
that was
feel
our
like
Monday.
we're best friends now.
That's how I feel too. I was like, I want to know all about your life.
That's why I asked her about her pets.
Yeah. Like, tell me about your relationship. Tell me about your doctoral degree. Tell me about everything.
You know what? We'll just come to Canada.
Yeah, I think that's the only alternative.
There's Dean Mendez.
Awesome. We've got time. Oh, gotta make him a co-host. I will never do that again. This is gonna remind me, check that. Hi, Dean Mendez. So you should, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to turn your camera on. Sorry about that.
Great. No, it's fine. If I can arrange
Awesome.
this where it doesn't fall down on us.
Perfect. We can see you, we can hear you.
No. Let's see here.
And then everyone should be in the waiting room right now. So we'll give it just about another minute.
Okay.
We had quite a few RSVPs, so.
Oh,
see. All right, we'll give it, we've got a few that are logging in right now, so we'll give it just a few minutes.
Crystal, are you seeing the chat?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally okay. And then for anyone that has any questions that we aren't going to cover or we haven't covered yet, we have a list of questions, some that have been submitted through the RSVPs. You are more than welcome to submit them in the chat, and the diversity committee members, the staff Senate diversity committee members that are on the call right now will be happy to make sure that those get addressed. All right, and because we had so many RSVPs, I think we should go ahead and get started. We still have a few more that are logging in, but I want to make sure that we get to use all 60 minutes or 58 minutes because we had a lot of RSVPs. So my name is Crystal Sanchez. By day, I am a program manager in the Office of Research Development and Communications. I love what I do. I help our faculty, mostly new faculty, junior faculty, get their grants funded. And I love it. I didn't know that there was such a thing, and I didn't know that this was my dream job. And so I love it. I love working for Dr. Heppert in all of his departments and teams. I'm also the diversity committee chair. I have had the honor of being on the committee last year as a committee member, and this year being the chair, and it has been very exciting, and I love it, and just kind of having my hands in all of these things and getting to know people across campus. So I will turn it over to my co-moderator, Amy Prouse.
Okay, I would talk muted. Okay, well, hello, everybody. My name is Amy Prouse, she, her pronouns. By day, I am the Assistant Director of Student Involvement here in the Center for Campus Life. And so what I do on a daily basis is I work with all of our student organization leaders to help them run their organization and help them be compliant with university policies. And then I also help our undergrad students and graduate students find organizations to join and get involved in campus life. This is the, I believe, third position that I've held at Texas Tech. And while I have loved all of my positions, like Crystal, I've fallen into a job that I absolutely love, and I love coming to work every day. And I love that I have landed on the diversity committee here with Staff Senate. Yes, my favorite thing about Red Talks is really just everyone's voices being to be able to be heard, and all of us learning from each other. So when they said you have to pick a committee, I was like, diversity, pick. Yes, so I'm glad to be here today and really excited for today's talk. And I'm going to turn it back over to Crystal.
Awesome. And we have enjoyed having Amy on the committee. It's good to have someone that has, you know, with all of the committee members, has a little bit of background in working in different departments, because I mean, I feel like we all bring a little bit of a different perspective of, you know, working with staff and students and faculty and so on. So I will, I'm just going to start with the first person that I see, and the panelists that we have today are Sarah, Jarrett, Brandon, and Dean Mendez. So they are going to introduce themselves and just, you know, their title and whatever else they'd like to share. So I will start with Sarah.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Cuevas. I am the program manager for the Office of the Dean of Students, which kind of encompasses all kinds of wonderful things. I work with our students of concern. I also oversee all of our marketing and our outreach efforts and making those campus connections. by evening. Sometimes I am one of the staff advisors for our Hispanic Student Society, and I'm also a certified mental health first aid instructor with the mission to get as many people on campus trained as possible. So thank you so much for the invitation today, and I'm looking forward to talking with Jarrett, Brandon, and Dean Mendez.
All right, Jarrett, you're next in my visual.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Jarrett Lujan. I'm a current PhD candidate now, so yay for that. In the higher education research program here on campus in the College of Education. I also serve as a research assistant for the College of Ed in the higher education program. And during the day, during the work hours, I'm the graduate vice president in Student Government Association. So I represent all graduate students in administrative meetings. So really looking forward to speaking with you guys and sharing our experiences from the student perspective.
Awesome. And Brandon.
Saludos a todos. Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Cruz, and I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a proud first-generation Latino student. By day, I serve as director for transition and mentoring programs, and I do get a lot of joy from it, but I also recognize the responsibility that I have for the diverse student communities that I serve. It includes our dreamers, immigrants, undocumented students, our first generation and college students, our students of color, our students from diverse gender and sexual identities. And so really the work I do is creating inclusive spaces for them to be successful through mentorship and through the different phases of their college journey. And then outside of all of that work, I am a first-year doctoral student in higher education administration. And so I'm really excited to be here with all of the other panelists, and I'm excited to share a little bit of my story.
Awesome. And then last we have Dean Mendez.
Hi, I'm Jesse Perez-Mendez. I am the Dean of the College of Education here at Texas Tech University. I'm in my third year as Dean, and it's been a great return. I'm a Texas Tech grad, got my master's degree here back, 20 some odd years ago in Lubbock. And so it's just, I'm just tickled pink to be here, and really am invested in the work that we're doing here at Tech as a Hispanic serving institution.
Awesome. So we'll just kind of get started. If this is your first time with Red Talk, so Red stands for Raiders Engaged in Diversity. This kind of podcast type idea birthed last year. We were trying to, as a Staff Senate Diversity Committee, we're trying to fill gaps on campus. And, we got with Jade in the DEI office, spoke with her about some things and just some other folks across campus. And we felt that what was needed were a place where our staff and whoever, faculty, students, and even, we really are trying to engage our local communities and beyond to also be a part of these discussions, but just a place and a platform where we could kind of have not only some outreach and education, but also ask some tough questions and be able to have a safe and brave place where there are people that are experienced, educated, that have the right backgrounds and credentials can answer these questions that we all have. And so people keep RSVPing to the Red Talks, and so we'll keep going as long as they keep wanting to participate in them. So this talk is a focus on our Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month that lasts through, I think, this week. And so I will first start with the question to our panelists. What does brown, proud, and educated mean to you? And anyone can jump in.
I'll start us off. I think for me, it's something that is beyond anything I've ever imagined for myself. I'm a Lubbock native as well. Went to Lubbock High School, went to South Plains, and transferred into Texas Tech University. My original dream was to be a makeup artist and hairstylist and work for the stars and do all the fun things. But I got very, very fortunate in my journey to get a full ride to college. So my family was like, hey, let's try this college thing and see where it goes from there. And for me, brown, proud, and educated, I think it kind of is a testament to what my journey has been. You know, being, I have a history degree for my undergrad, and I just finished up my master's in May with a master's degree in communication studies. And I also was able to complete a graduate certificate as well. Part of my journey was doing an analysis of a document from 1971, and it was from the first Chicanas Women's Conference in 1970. So brown, proud, and educated, I think for me just resonates in so many levels. 4% of Latina women get a higher education degree. And so when I think about educated and where my abuela was and where my other grandma, that's what that means to me. It personifies that, but also hoping to build a legacy for my 2 daughters. So.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, Sarah. And I'll kind of give my perspective. You know, when I think of brown, proud, and educated, I think of the history of communities of color and the journey for Latinos, Latinx populations in Texas. And we talk about stolen education, and we talk about access to education. And I think of just all the history we went through leading up to today and this generation, where we are taking up space and we are represented in our executive leadership and our administration across the US. And I think of, you know, the journey, but what's to come in the future. And I think of, you know, we are in these positions where we're pursuing our higher education and we're breaking into the boardrooms, et cetera. But then thinking of that future generation and how we're bringing them up. And I think, Sarah, going back to what you said about, you know, you're being that example for your family and your legacy, you know, that's so prevalent for me. How am I modeling my behavior and my experience for my nieces and my nephews and the people in my sphere of influence? So I think brown, proud, and educated is both an honor and a privilege, but it's also a call to action to make sure that it doesn't stop with us.
Yeah, I agree with Brandon completely. I think that 2 words come to mind whenever whenever I'm thinking about this, and it's the sacrifices that were placed before me to get me to where I am today. Like, I was just setting up my ofrenda for Dia de los Muertos this past weekend. And, you know, as I'm looking at these photos and thinking about it, I start thinking about, like, my God, you know, my grandfather, you know, he was a janitor, you know, in the high school, and while my dad was going to college. And I think of, like, all the sacrifices that he made just to make sure that he stayed in school. And if he didn't stay in school, then I may not have ever existed, or never met my mom, or, you know, you start thinking of all those different chain of events that happen. So I think almost every day, especially now as we start to remember our loved ones, that it's the sacrifices that were made to help me get to where I'm at today. And the second word is responsibility. And that's just kind of the responsibility of being educated and pulling those along with us, you know, whether it's the nieces and nephews like Brandon was talking about, or if it's just a student that you know that you're mentoring. I have some of the best mentors in the world, and I wouldn't have gotten through undergrad without them. And we can maybe talk about that a little bit later, but that's kind of, you know, where I get those 2 words from is, yes, honor the past and the sacrifices that were made, but also being educated and being brown has such a responsibility to pull those along with you and help them out to also be educated and to get more accessible resources as well.
I completely agree with everything that was shared. And so I think, you know, it's about family in the future, right? You know, it's about what Jared and Sarah, you know, and Brandon, you know, it's about, you know, what our grandparents did, what our parents did to set us up for the future, set us up for success. But it's also as far as how we're going to impact the future generations. How are we leaving the door open? How are we adding more seats to the table where decisions are made? Whatever, if we're working in the boardroom, in administration, in academia. And so really, I think it means a lot of things. And I think at the forefront is not forgetting who we are and where we came from.
I love that. Kind of leading off to that, Jared kind of touched on it a little bit, but who or what would you say inspired you to pursue higher education?
I can start. I think I was in a unique spot. You know, I'm a 1st generation college student, but I had a mother that was adamant, you are going to college. It's not a choice. You are going to college. And so she, she moved heaven and earth. She worked 2 jobs, tried to, raise money, save money. We ate peanut butter and jelly for the majority of the week, and taught me how to cook, clean, all prepared me, for everything. And I guess so really my inspiration came from my mother, because she went to college for like a week, and then she had some medical issues, which eventually led to me. And she always wanted to pursue a higher education. And I think that drive and wanting that for me, and the value of a degree was so important to her that she didn't give me a choice. But I was really happy about that, because she actually did the work and really helped me out a lot. Whereas I know that not every first generation college student has access to a parent that is able to do that. And so I was very fortunate, and she was my inspiration.
I'm a first generation graduate student. So I knew eventually my path would kind of lead to that at some point in my life, hopefully. And definitely, my inspiration is definitely my grandmothers. They were the reason why I started researching what I started researching, like 5 or 6 years ago. And to be able to know them as women, not just as my abuelas, was very powerful. And in seeking that, I found that it was the inspiration of all my family. I started working in the corporate industry right after I graduated with my undergrad, and then got very fortunate to come and get a position here at Texas Tech. And that was always my goal. My dream job was to work for my alma mater and to be an academic advisor, and I got to do that. But it also came out of necessity for being a better provider for my children. So I can say my life has been supported by some very beautiful and strong women. And even at that, my grandfather would always say, "Are you done yet? Are you done with all those degrees? Like, are you running the place? Like, where are you at?" He's like, "I just need to know, like, on the scale. So when I tell people, here's your card." And I was like, "Okay, Grandpa, hold on. Let's talk through this." And so I think my inspiration too, I echo you too, Jarrett, because my mom was like, "If you want to do this, you're going to do it. There's no like changing your mind. And there were times I think whenever I was going to my evening classes, I missed telling my kids goodnight. My 8-year-old, I started school with my graduate degree when she was like in kindergarten. So her whole, like these years, she's known mommy's been in school. So it's been quite a journey, but I think family is probably the most and biggest inspiration.
Family. I'm just going to say it. My parents, from the beginning, very similar to the other testimony, it's family. There wasn't a day where a college experience was not in the path that my parents had paved for me. And, when you think of Latinos, Latinx populations, and this concept of familia and community, for me, my own experience is family is where it's at, and that was important to me. So if parents said you're going to college, I was going to college. And as a first generation and college student, it was navigating those processes. My dad, he went into the Army at 16. He had a family to raise. My mom had a taste of community college, but there was no one to tell her to keep going. She didn't finish. And so for me, it was that natural next step in my journey through my parents' motivation and inspiration. We didn't quite know what questions to ask, but we knew we didn't know everything. We were first generation family. So it was, we need to find a school. We need to figure out how to pay for it. We didn't know the complexities of the things, but we generally knew that there was information we didn't have that I needed to understand in order to get the education. And so I think, for my own journey, like there's so many things I would have just done differently, had I understood better the nuances of financing a college degree or leaving the city and moving to a different state for college, et cetera. But I wouldn't necessarily change the experience for anything. I had my taste of study abroad. I was able to show my family around my college community. So they were always that driving force. And I think that's something really important for people to hear and really internalize, is that many of our diverse student communities have a very ingrained connection to their family. And how do we lift up the family involvement in the college experience to encourage and support inclusion and belonging, so that students are ultimately more successful? Like, they don't have to choose between being with family or being in academia.
Yeah, I'm going to mirror exactly what's been shared previously. Yeah, I had the opportunity to know my great grandparents, and so I think about the past generations and how hard they worked. It was not just one job; it was several jobs across the board. You know, both my grandparents were migrant workers. My dad was a Marine. You know, my mom was a school nurse. You know, and I think about how all these generations really set up. You know, that we've been, you know, as a family or as a people, been shut out of the system. And so what motivates me on the work I do is how can we get more Latinos, more Latinx, you know, in the higher education, in decision-making positions, policy-making apparatuses. And so that's what motivates me every day, and the work that got me through college and through grad school and what I'm doing today.
So Sarah mentioned a percentage. I think she said 4% a little bit earlier. What would you say is a difference between you graduating and not? You know, why you? Why did you make sure that you walked across the stage? Why did you show up to your class? Why did you ensure that you turned in, you know, those assignments? So what would be the difference between you and not the 4%?
I'm going to say it's my village. And then I mean my extended village, you know. My parents, they saw me, you know, night after night doing these edits. I chose to do a thesis track, and I did 2 publishable papers. In hindsight, I probably would have thought a little bit more through that, but I love to write. And my hope is to keep our stories going, whether it's with communication studies or it's the voices we echo in higher education. But I think for me, what kept me going, I have a very supportive team here at the Dean of Students who saw that value, even starting with Dr. Duran. You know, she was like, you've got to do these key things to keep yourself motivated and see it through. And the second piece was, I love to learn. I am a lifelong learner. So for me, the more knowledge that I gained, my goal was always to come back and give back more. So I think my journey became less about me at some pieces, if that makes sense. And, you know, there were times, and I'm going to own it. There were times where I would say, I can't do this. I can't. This is hard. I have no idea what's going on. And it hurts. It does. It hurts in some sense, intellectually. But I think the goal for me was walking across the stage. That monumental moment for me with my now 8-year-old sitting in the audience with my family, and, you know, seeing that moment, she refused to miss it. Like, there could have been a whole many other things going on, but she said, I sat in the sun for you so we could see you do this. And also, I'm going to say my grandmother, because so 10 years ago, she would say, when are you going to get a husband? And I would say, well, after I get a master's degree or maybe a PhD degree. And she was like, what, a PhD? And so then I would tell her, well, like, this is my goal. So now our conversation flipped to, instead of when are you getting married, to when are you finishing that degree? And when are you going to graduate? And what do we need to do for that? So I honestly, truly believe it was my tribe. It was my people who supported me, even when, because I think too, part of coming into these spaces and places, there's a lot of imposter syndrome. You don't know if you're supposed to be here or if you're meant to be here, or what does that look like and feel like. And to have that encouragement, I think, carried me and made me more resilient than I even thought I was as a person.
Yeah, I agree completely with what Sarah said. You know, I usually tell some of my professors this on the back end, is that I have very severe imposter syndrome. Like I will literally, it will stop me dead in my tracks in the middle of writing a paper, you know, and so really what got me through that in undergrad, my undergrad was in biology, totally random. I'm in higher ed now, but biology degree. you know, and I was a very hard subject, and really it was my mentors. My mentors that looked like me, were from the same area, Dr. John Klingeman, Dr. Javier Flores from Angelo State, you know, they really helped me out a lot. You know, I would go to them, go to their offices and just say, look, I'm having a hard day. You know, I just don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to fill out my FAFSA. You know, I don't know how to, you know, what do I do for graduation? How do I sign up for it? Is that even a thing? Like, what time do I get there? You know, even things like that, you know, little worries. But if it weren't for them, I would not be here today. And I definitely would not be pursuing a PhD. That was not in my cards, y'all. Like, I had no idea. Like, I thought I was going to finish my undergraduate degree and just chill and not, you know, that was a lot. I'm not going to go on to do more of this. But I ended up going and getting a couple masters, and now I'm getting my PhD. I give full credit, not only to my family, of course, but really those mentors that were there in front of me saying, keep going, it's okay, take little bites out of it, etc.
Yeah, Jared just mentioned something that I think we need to normalize, and that's imposter syndrome. I think, you know, I know I've suffered, I've gone through that in every position I've had overall. And, you know, one thing I have to remind myself, and it kind of ties back to the response earlier about the role of family and thinking about what motivates you. And I always have to remind myself, you know, if there's one word I think you know, the previous generations would tell me, that one thing that their life story has taught me is to persist. Whenever there's that self-doubt, you know, you belong. And you're in the position because you're qualified, you've gotten the education. And I think, you know, although sometimes that little gremlin you know, the imposter syndrome whispers in your ear, you know, you just have to shoo it away. It's like, you know, we're going to get through this, you know, and you know, you've done all the work, you belong. Just always make sure to persist.
Only because Dean Mendez brought it up, I'm going to have to say my piece now about imposter syndrome. When we talk about imposter syndrome, we put a lot of that ownership on ourselves and, you know, why do I feel this way and what's wrong with me? And it's not what's wrong with you, it's what's wrong with the system and the structure and the experience. Like, what are the external forces that are in some ways making you feel the way you do, in some ways othering you, putting you in a place where you don't feel like you belong, or you can't accept the fact that you are meant to be here. And so I will leave it at that. But I think that's just a really important thing to question is, yes, I'm feeling what I feel and that's valid, but why am I feeling what I feel and why is that wrong or right? Jarrett and Sarah mentioned like the familia piece, the mentorship piece. So I'll hit on something slightly different with peer groups. So what kept me in college, I think it's very much holistic, but I'll say that it was my peer groups, you know, having friends, my home away from home. Again, I was studying in Dallas, but my family was in San Antonio, Texas. And so it was like having those people to lean on and to sometimes be frustrated with, or to be vulnerable with, or to live life together, because family was so close, ingrained in my identity and my culture. Having this familia at school, they live right down the street. Sometimes they would crash in your dorm, really helped both curricularly in the classroom because it was a tiny liberal arts college, but also co-curricularly with going to dinner or having lunch, or your spirituality or whatever it is that was part of your identity and how you could live life together. And that was the difference between me sitting in my dorm homesick or anxious or just frozen because I didn't know what to do next or where to go. But I absolutely think it's a holistic approach for sure.
Yeah, so I think I love the theme of the end of that whole first part of this, so that whole discussion. The theme seems to be, what supports you, who supports you, and just the theme of support. And so let's transition a little bit into talking about, in your experience, what have you found to be the best ways to support specifically first-gen students?
I'll start out just from my positionality. I think we have to hire faculty and staff that are our first gen themselves of certain, they have to reflect the student population we serve. And I think that's to me one of the first steps in my positionality as dean that I'm very cognizant of, and I want to make sure our college leadership reflects our students. And really, I am grateful to be working with a number of really thoughtful colleagues that think among different types of dimensions and different types of, and they understand that all of our students come from different walks of life, and they can identify that through their personal experience.
So I think for me, in my experience being a first gen, one of the best things that was afforded to me was a community. And it starts with student organizations. And, I was a part of the Association of Mexican American Students, AMAS for short. And, every Wednesday we gathered and we talked with each other. And so I think, without going into too much of that, I think that, institutions, people, communities need to invest in those organizations, those student organizations, and supporting them, not only financially, but also with social capital, making sure that they have access to these different things and they have the seat at the table as students. But that also goes into, we had these communities where it was like a foster family, basically for first gen students, and somebody on campus would adopt you and they would take care of you basically for like the year. And so it was really important to me because all of a sudden I had a host dad and a host mom that I knew that no matter what, I could go into their offices and they could buy me lunch if I needed help with lunch, or if I just needed somebody to vent to. That goes back to the mentorship. I think between those two different kinds of programs, that was what supported me, whether it's formally or informal. I think that those are important.
I'm definitely going to say time and visibility. Often in my experience of working with students of concern and trying to help them understand what distress they're dealing with, or even if it's something that has gone on at home, if a loved one passes away, they're going to want to be with their family. So helping them understand how to navigate those things across the board. But I think time is so key. If we have people in those positions like Dean Mendez said, and if we have some type of support like Jarrett brought up, and we give that time, and it's honestly just almost undivided time to allow someone who is a first generation student to ask those questions, to help build down those barriers, I think is the most important thing. And I think of the movie In the Heights, where she says, these embroidered napkins, that was our way of inserting ourselves in the system. So if we find these ways and these nooks and crannies and peaks, whether it's with Brandon and his, DDI and all the wonderful things they do, and Jarrett with his graduate work, and Dean Mendez with all the awesome things we're hearing from his college, time can be something that is so powerful to help that belongingness and support across the board.
I think when we talk about serving first generation students, looking at it as an opportunity for all the university to engage, I think, and I'm going to be a little critical, sometimes we like to work in our bubbles. And so, when Brandon says he works with first generation students, well, that's Brandon's work. But really, and I'm going to use Texas Tech as a lens. We serve over 20% first generation students. That's 8,500 plus students. Someone's working with first generation students in a classroom, in an advising session, at a student org, in a research project. It's happening whether we know it or not. And so what we need to do is be comfortable from the top down, from the bottom up, from side to side, asking questions of, tell me a little bit about yourself. Open-ended questions. I'm not here to out people. I'm not here to pry. Let me know something about you so that I can work the ladder backwards on how to support you and give you space to navigate an experience that maybe you don't understand. And then in addition, when we talk about first gen plus narratives, this concept of intersectionality and how multiple identities such as first gen status and being Latinx or being Black African American adds additional layers on how people approach the college experience or are challenged by the system of academia and what that means to walk into a space and have to justify your masculinity or your womanhood or your ableism ability, all these different layers. So when we think of umbrella terms, it's easy to say first gen, but who are we really talking about? Are we talking about a certain population and how to really serve them intentionally through curriculum and instruction and engagement and belonging, the whole thing, not just do well in class, find an org, etc.
Yeah, so Brandon, you lead us right into the next part of this discussion. And so, you know, you talk about the lens of the Texas Tech system. So let's bring that down to some specifics a little bit. What would you like to see Texas Tech implement that maybe they don't already do? Or what does Texas Tech do well? Maybe what is being used that maybe could be revised to work better. So 3 parts to that, but yes.
Amy, are you talking at me or to the panel in general?
After I hit mute, I figured I probably need to specify, but that is definitely to the entire panel.
Well, I'll start out, and then I'll let my other panelist colleagues, chime in. I think, where tech is now, well, I think the role that Texas Tech can play and has been playing for the past couple of years is servicing the educational needs of Latinx, that Latinx community. In the state of Texas, we're going to be the majority population any day now. I think we're about 200,000 folks short of being the majority. And so that is literally like anytime today or tomorrow that's going to happen. So I think, the work that we do here at Texas Tech is going to be crucial for our state's future. Where we are, I think Gina Garcia has in 2017 came out with a really great typology about kind of weighing where HSIs are. And I think in tech's, development trajectory, we're still at a Latinx enrolling or Hispanic enrolling status at this point. And I think we're coming to grips because there's been a seismic shift here at Tech. I mean, over the past 10 years, the Latinx population has exploded overall. If we look at the enrollment growth, the Anglo population has remained stagnant overall. But what's really been driven us to 40,000 students strong at this point has been the Latinx community across the board. And so I think, I know the president is very in conversations with them, he's very on board is continuing to push the envelope and better serving Latinx students across the board, and work continues to be done. But I just wanted, maybe that's the most helpful context for that, to at least kind of take apart those 3 different questions, is where tech is at and where it needs to be. And it's enrolling right now, but we're striving to becoming a Latinx serving institution.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dean Mendez. I think that one of I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but my dissertation's on Hispanic serving institutions, and I can't tell you enough. Like, I used to be student regent in 2017, so I've kind of been involved in Texas Tech leadership for a while now, and I've seen the growth from where it was and where it is today and where it needs to be. And I think Dean Mendez is correct in that we're still in that enrolling phase of the typology that Dr. Gina Garcia puts out. I think we're kind of sort of moving towards this enhancing phase where we kind of have more cultural events, like where students are able to kind of see their culture represented. And then the next part is outcomes. How are we measuring that? And how are we measuring that success? And I think that tech is moving that direction, especially this year. I will give it to DEI and all the other partners for this Hispanic Heritage Month, because it has been phenomenal. And just showing and showcasing the different ways that the Hispanic Latinx experience is contributing to the TTU community. There's still work to be done outside of this month. And that's really the crux of the issue is, where do we go from here outside of October or September 15th through October 15th? How are we showcasing the Hispanic culture in the sub, on a regular basis, or in the classroom, like hiring more faculty members that look like them and have the cultural references that they're able to relate to. I can go on and on because again, I'm writing on this, so I'll pause there. But I think that that's kind of, where we need to head is just kind of looking at the problem a little bit differently outside of the month of Hispanic Heritage Month.
I'll kind of jump in and follow up what Jarrett said. With kind of on the ground level, talking with some students, and I was just having a conversation earlier this morning with the writing group that I lead, and with some faculty, and talking about the importance of listening to our students and listening to their voice. And I'm a part and have been a part of some classroom discussions where the students don't feel heard and they don't feel like they have a place. And yet if it weren't for the students, then who would we be serving? How would we have these positions that we have and these goals that that we want to set forth to accomplish? And it kind of humbled me a lot, and it made me want to kind of be their voice when I can be their voice. And so with what Jarrett said, there are talks of what can we do year round, because the feedback that we received were, yeah, great. We have these events, and rightfully so. They did a great job. DEI did a great job. DEI and lots of other faces across campus that came together to collaborate and make this a wonderful last month. But the question was, so what? Where can I see myself year round? Who can I feel a sense of belonging? Where can I feel a sense of belonging year round? Because I think that this is, a great idea, but how can we make that idea lasting? And on the flip side of that, because we have such a large majority of Hispanic Latinx students, why is it important to have that outreach and education to the other 80%? Why is it important for them to know about, the students that they see on campus? So I'm glad that you brought that up, Jared. It's kind of a follow-up to our next question. So we can probably just skip that question and get right back to Amy, but it was regarding kind of serving, the difference between serving and enrolling. And so I'm glad that both Dean Mendez and Jarrett brought that up.
Yes, so our next question is actually a question that has been submitted from our audience. So the question is as follows. This is for the entire panel. We've heard a lot about the value of serving as an HSI. What was an act of serving that made a difference to you in your pursuit of a degree?
I think when I think of this question, there's one thing that comes to mind, and it kind of goes beyond more of a narrative type thing, where I, as a young Latino, I was kind of kept away from my culture for a lot of the time. There are many reasons why, and I can go into that in therapy later on, but I think that, for now, like when I came to Angelo State and then eventually Texas Tech, I look for communities that look like me. And I was at a predominantly white institution, and I was in a huge culture shock. Had no idea why I was in a culture shock, but I was. And because I was kind of kept away from that identity, I didn't know how to fix it. And I got involved in that organization that I told you about, and it was like a light bulb turned on in a moment where I all of a sudden felt really comfortable, and I learned, like, this may shock you, but like I had no idea who Cesar Chavez was until I came to my undergrad. And just learning about him and all of his work, I have pictures of him now, like in my office and stuff, like, because it motivates me. It helps me feel close to my culture. And so I think that that was one thing that made a difference to me. And I just keep drawing it back to that student organization experience, because I mean, God, if I didn't have that, I don't know if I would be here right now. I don't know if I'd have the mentors that I have right now, the degrees, because they were also there for me. They were my family when my family couldn't be there, and they were 4 hours away. So how did that make a difference? It made a world of difference for them to just take me in, teach me a little bit about the culture that I was kind of missing out on, and it helped me form my identity. And that's really what, and it was an HSI as well. So that was kind of one of those serving aspects, was that organization.
I think for me, my experience is a little bit different because Texas Tech didn't have this HSI status whenever I was getting my undergraduate degree. But for me, it was my academic advisor. She did listen to me. She did push me. She even tough loved me. Like, I was her first student of concern, and she didn't tell me that till years after I graduated. But for me, in my undergrad, I suffered with severe depression and anxiety. And I often tell students when we're sitting here and we're talking about these experiences, I tell them, I know a little bit of what you're going through. I don't know what you feel, but I'm proof that you can have these struggles and still come back with a good GPA. You can still do this as long as you know where your why is, where your heart is, and what does that look like for you? As an academic advisor, I had a student call me out, probably like my second year of advising, and said, "Hey, you are brown and you're hiding in an office. Why?" And I said, "Oh," and he said, "No, Sarah, really, why are you hiding? What can we do to get you out here?" And from that point on, I decided, you know what, I'm not hiding, period. But I'm here, and I want to give in any way that I can. And so those serving aspects, I think, were, for me in my journey, was in the resources that Tech offers in different ways across the board. And so I'm very grateful for that, because across the board, I don't think I would have had that. And now working with HSS, I'm so proud of everything that they do. And so I'm like, hey guys, let's do this, or make sure you get out there and do this. And they're striving so much to help get their presence so everyone feels part of that familia. So that is one thing I wish I would have had in my undergrad. I feel very humbled and grateful to be working with them right now. So yes, student orgs are very important in having that social connection while we're here.
For me, I'm so sorry, Dean Mendez.
Oh, please. No, please, Brandon.
For me, thank you. It was these like micro moments. I talk a lot about this in different spaces, and this may have just been a product of my liberal arts experience, but I didn't see my experience as 100% I didn't belong or 100% I belonged. I don't think it's linear. I think it's three-dimensional. Did I belong in the classroom? Did I belong with my peer group? Did I belong in student orgs? It was very multifaceted, but what worked well for me was these micro moments with my RA, who would see me hanging out and just be like, "Hey, what's up? How's it going?" And I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, "Oh, hey, things are good. Thank you for asking." But then on the flip side, going into the cafeteria, because I had my meal card and I would go to lunch, and seeing the staff, the food staff, the lunch staff there, and finding my tia there, represented, it's like, oh, and then they would tease me "Mijo, what are you doing here so late? We're about to close." And it's those moments that make you feel like you're at home, but not. And I think my point in sharing those things is we need to remember that it's not just academic advisors, staff, administrator, professor. It's the people down the street making our campus look nice. It's the people that, "Hey, ¿cómo te llamas? Me llamo Brandon. Hey, ¿tú cómo estás? Muy bien, muy bien." I was I felt at home, I felt comfortable. And that made me want to do well and stay. That made me be there are people here in my corner. Let me go study really fast, as opposed to being worried, And so I think you know, thinking about how campus, you know, we have a lot of staff here and we need to remember to invest in the staff that make our experience. We assume Chick-fil-A is going to be open. We assume the sub is going to have our, you know, little B version of a Chipotle bowl, you know, to eat. And so those people there give you that connection and give you those micro moments. And I think that's powerful because I felt that when I was 18 and I see it today when I go there, because I'm not saying they think I look 18, but maybe they think I'm like 19 because they still kind of treat me like a student. So I'm like, wait a second. But I digress.
No, micro moments. I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about that, Brand. I think that could be a dissertation. You know, that's a new concept. It's great. So you gotta remember that. You know, later in your while you're writing your dissertation. You know, I think I guess I'll to not to parakeet what other people said, but just kind of approach this a little differently. You know, I think I've worked at predominantly white institutions, and I've worked at I worked at UCF, which is also an HSI, except their student population is mostly Puerto Rican. And of course, Texas Tech is more Mexican American, and there's just a feeling of home. It just feels warmer as far as working at an HSI. And we talked about looking at our Texas Tech very critically about this, how we can make it better. But it is, yes, we have warts we need to address, but there's just a certain warmth around it that I just you don't see. You don't feel everywhere overall. And so it just makes me, as I think about as I'm hearing, Sarah and Jared and Brandon share their thoughts, I just, I really am appreciative of all we have here on our beautiful campus.
I have one more thing. I think that because I wanted to make sure, although I'm saying like that student organizations are very important, I think it's very important to also like note that they shouldn't be doing the heavy lifting. I think a lot, well, I can't say that, I don't know that for sure, but my impression of the experiences on institutional campuses that have Hispanic organizations is that we tend to say, okay, now what do y'all want to do? And then they go and put on a program. They're the ones that have all the students, so they're in charge of them. Let's get all the Hispanic students there. You guys are in charge of getting them there. I think that's wrong. And I've been a victim of that in the past in my undergrad. And I think, the institution needs more buy-in. And that's just across the board HSIs. We shouldn't lean on the students to make cultural programming or getting students there. We should be doing that ourselves and finding ways to make it easier for them to do that on their own, as opposed to adding more to their plate. Because number one, they're students. They should be focused on their classes. Should is the word. But they also have student organization work to do, whether it's homecoming or other fun stuff. We don't want to add to their plate. So I think that was just an important little thing that, yes, student organizations are super important, but they shouldn't have to do the heavy lifting when it comes to this work.
You all have shared so much, and I have seen and recognized myself in so much of what you've shared. And I feel that a lot of people that are on, listening in probably feel the same way. And that's the point of these Red Talks, is to not only feel this kind of engagement and feel normal and share these conversations and these ideas that a lot of us share, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Or yes, I feel the same way. I had the same experience. But also it's the outreach and education part. It's other people that are on the call that are also learning about the Hispanic and Latinx community, not only within Lubbock, but also on campus and as Brandon mentioned, multifaceted, multi-layered. And I share the same with you, Brandon. My parents, picked cotton, and my grandmother came over from Mexico, and my aunt is a janitor, in Abernathy, and that I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because, like you said, we are not, I heard something the other day that said, don't build your fence taller, make your table longer. And, that's what we should do, not just for the Hispanic and Latinx community, but for all of us to have a seat at the table and have these discussions. So I'm so thankful that you all were able to take some time out of your day. I know that we're all busy people, but I know that we were also all passionate about being brown, proud, and educated. And I guess the one piece of, or the one last thing before we wrap up is, what piece of advice would you give maybe your high school, college self, you know, or even maybe a current student or somebody that may be listening in? What piece of advice would you give them to either help be a part of that sense of belonging or that community engagement, or just maybe your younger self to hang in there and that you do make it on the other side?
I'll just say one word, persist. Just persist. There's gonna be time, like we said, might be the micro moments, the imposter syndrome that's gonna happen, but you just need to persist.
For me, I think if I were talking to myself going into college, it would be take care of your mental health. We don't talk about it enough. And if it were me talking actually to me, I'd be like, boy, go to therapy, because you need it. And that's not to be funny. That's like a legitimate thing. If I really truly feel if I would have been exposed to that, it would have made my experience a lot easier. And we need to be talking about mental health especially in our community, and especially on the male Latino community more, and breaking that stigma.
My tip or a piece of advice is to the people attending. And if you're like a student or a family member, or in some way have proximity to students, this can be very intimidating and inundating to think of like this added pressure of how we're creating servingness towards these student communities, first gen, Latinx. It's okay not to know all the answers. Talk to your people across campus, talk to your colleagues that are doing the work, use your tools on the website to find people that you can go to, Staff Senate, Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, my unit within that umbrella, transition and mentoring programs. Like, there are people that are here to help you help others. And then lastly, we can't do this work alone. So no one's expecting you to do it alone. Use each other. And so that's how we'll create sustainable change, is if we work together instead of by ourselves tapping away on our computers.
I think I would definitely say to myself or anybody else who's listening is that you matter. I often tell students that there's only one of you, and the world uniquely needs what you have to offer at this point in time. So what do we need to do to make that happen? No matter what our plate has on it, whatever chair we get, even if we're like scooting in with a stool, you're still there. And something I was telling myself is I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And I think about what Dean Mendez said with persisting, but also allowing ourselves to be tired, to be a little bit confused, to go through those phases, because anything worth having is hard. It is. And I usually say after the storm comes this beautiful rainbow. So where am I on your journey? So if everybody who's listening and participating today, thank you for your time and allowing us to share these pieces. And don't forget, we're all here. My door is always open. And if it's not open, it's unlocked. So don't forget that. But definitely just to keep going, because I never dreamed that I would have a master's. I never dreamed that I would be even on this panel today. So things in the future, it still keeps growing, whether we realize it or not. So we matter, we're more, and the next future's the best is yet to come, right?
Yes, thank you all so much. And Jarrett, we're gonna talk about mental health at some point. So I think next month we are doing a little bit of that for our next Red Talk. It's going to be regarding veterans and a little bit of the community that we serve and live in regarding, you know, our homeless and mental health and all of those things, because like you all mentioned, mental health is in everything. It's in every single day. It's, you know, we wake up every day and, you know, we don't know what each other is battling outside of just going to work and being, you know, colleagues and students and support and all of that. So I'm glad that you did mention that part of it. It's 2:00 on the dot, so I want to respect everyone's time. Thank you all again for taking some time out today and sharing a little bit of your insights and your journeys and also some inspiration. I felt a lot of inspiration in what you all shared today. So thank you again, and hope everyone has a good rest of their week.